Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere cold, like really cold. Picture this: gray skies, frozen fjords, the smell of smoked fish in the air, and a chill so sharp it could cut through your wool socks. You've just woken up in a Viking settlement, your breath turning into little clouds, and the first thing you notice isn't the cold. It's that everyone's clothes look surprisingly perfect. Not a wrinkle in sight, which is weird, considering they don't exactly have electricity, let alone steam irons. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle out of a wooden longhouse, rubbing your eyes. A few Viking women are already at work by the fire, heating stones in a pit lined with ash. They're chatting, laughing, occasionally scolding a kid for tripping over a goat. Someone hands you a piece of linen, rough, heavy, but spotless. Here, she says, make it smooth. You blink. Smooth. With what? That's when she points to the fire pit. Inside are smooth, gray stones, oval, heavy, and glowing faintly from the heat. You reach for one and immediately regret it. It's scorching. She laughs and tosses you a reindeer hide to use as a pad. Not like that, she says. You'll burn the cloth gently, always gently. As the warmth seeps through the hide, you start to slide the stone over the linen. It hisses, releasing tiny puffs of steam. It's oddly satisfying, like popping bubble wrap from the year 900. The wrinkles vanish slowly, the fabric flattening under your hand. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows. You, a modern traveler who once Googled how to iron a shirt in 5 minutes, are now officially part of the Viking laundry squad. They call the tool a linen smoother, though you'll later learn historians gave it that name. Back then, it was just a stone that makes cloth behave. Archaeologists have found hundreds of these soapstones across Scandinavia, some shaped like tiny paddles, others polished into elegant pebbles that fit perfectly in the palm. Many were carved from a soft rock called steadite, easy to heat and hard to crack. It's kind of genius when you think about it. The Vikings didn't just conquer seas, they conquered static cling. And here's a little twist: those stones weren't always used with fire. Some were stored in boiling water, others were simply warmed near the hearth. The goal was to reach that sweet spot between warm enough to press and not hot enough to set your house on fire, which, given how flammable wool and hay are, feels like a pretty important. You pause for a second, watching the village around you. Smoke curls up from the chimneys. Kids chase chickens through the mud, and a group of men haul nets down to the shore. The women keep ironing, humming softly, a rhythm that feels older than the language itself. Maybe it's habit, maybe it's pride. After all, looking sharp is a universal instinct. A sudden gust of wind lifts a few linen sheets into the air, turning the drying yard into a momentary ballet. You grab one before it hits the mud, and the woman beside you grins. See, she says, even the gods like clean clothes. You laugh, and for a second, it doesn't feel like a reenactment. It feels real, like you're truly there, sharing a quiet domestic secret with people who lived 1,000 years ago. Later, you'll learn that historians still argue about these stones. Were they truly used for ironing, or were some for smoothing hides, shaping fabric, even massaging tired muscles? The truth might be all of the above, but standing there, with the warmth of the stone in your hand and the smell of soap and ash in the air, you don't need archaeology to tell you. It works. You turn the linen over one last time, admiring your handiwork. No creases, no burns. The Viking woman nods approvingly, and you feel like you've passed some unspoken test. In the distance, the fjord glitters under the morning sun. The wind bites your cheeks, but your heart is warm. You can't help thinking, maybe civilization didn't begin with steel or paper, but with someone trying to smooth out the wrinkles. The smell of pine smoke lingers in your hair as you step outside again. The sun hasn't climbed far above the horizon, but the village is already awake. A blacksmith hammers at a blade. Kids chase a shaggy dog. Someone yells about missing fish. But today, your task is stranger. You've been invited to meet the Soapstone Squad. No, that's not a rock band. It's what the villagers call the group of women who guard the settlement's secret weapon against wrinkled tunics. The sacred stones. You follow them to a workshop on the edge of the fjord, where the air smells like wet earth and animal fat. Inside, a low fire glows. On the floor are dozens of stones, each polished to a soft sheen, lined up like sleeping seals. The women sit around them, sharpening, rubbing, and coating each one in something that looks suspiciously like melted bear fat. One woman, tall and broad-shouldered, motions for you to come closer. "You want to make your clothes smooth?" she asks in an accent, so thick you could spread it on bread. "Then you must feed the stone." Feed it. You watch as she dips her thumb into a clay bowl and spreads a thin layer of grease across a warm stone surface. It gleams like marble. The moment the fat hits the heat, a faint nutty scent fills the air. Surprisingly pleasant, like toasted bread in a forest. The soapstone squad isn't just about ironing. It's an entire ritual. Each stone has a name: Sigrid's blessing, the little troll, Freyja's smile. They claim each one behaves differently. Some hold heat longer, some glide smoother, and others have what they call a jealous spirit. You're warned never to use someone else's stone without permission. Apparently, even tools have personalities here. You pick one up, carefully. It's heavy but balanced, cool to the touch at first. As it warms in your hand, you notice faint carvings along the edge. Runes. You can't read them, but they look like prayers. Or maybe reminders. Don't burn your linen again. A woman named Astrid laughs when you ask what they mean. "Ah," she says, "they say it's for good luck, but maybe it's just so we know whose stone is whose." Practicality dressed up as superstition. That's Viking innovation in a nutshell. One of the older women sits beside you, handing over a fresh cloth. "Try it," she says, slowly. Stones don't like to rush. You follow her lead, pressing and sliding in rhythm with her strokes. The linen sighs under the pressure, the fibers softening and flattening. For a moment, you understand why they treat this like art. It's not just about clean clothes. It's about patience, precision, control. It's strange, isn't it? We think of Vikings as rough warriors swinging axes and raiding monasteries. Yet here they are, fussing over the perfect crease in a wool tunic. History, as it turns out, wrinkles easily too. As the morning wears on, you help polish a few more stones. Astrid tells you how her mother once traded a single, perfect soapstone for 2 goats and a silver brooch. "Men think war wins wealth," she says, "but good linen gets you invited to dinner." You nod solemnly, as if she's just delivered an ancient TED Talk. By noon, the women start packing up their stones into little pouches lined with wool. "Too much heat spoils them," Astrid warns. "They must cool slowly like tempers." You try to imagine a Viking rage, cooling workshop. Inhale courage, exhale chaos. Before you leave, the eldest woman hands you a stone small, oval, gray with a hint of green. "This one's quiet," she says. "Keep it close." You don't know what she means, but you slip it into your pocket anyway. It's warm, comforting, maybe even humming a little. Outside, the wind has picked up, sweeping through the grasslands and stirring the sails of the boats down by the shore. You glance back at the workshop. The women are laughing again, waving you off with greasy hands and glinting eyes. You can't help but think, the Vikings may have been fierce. But their secret to survival wasn't just muscle or war. It was the humble art of keeping things smooth. The next morning, you wake to the sound of running water and something slapping against stone. For a brief, bleary moment, you think it's thunder. Then you remember, this is laundry day. And in Viking country, laundry day is basically an extreme sport. The air bites your face as you trudge down to the river. It's not even sunrise yet, but half the village is already there, knee-deep in icy water, laughing, yelling, and occasionally cursing in Norse. A few women wave when they see you, motioning for you to join. One tosses you a bundle of wool clothes, soaked and heavy. "You wash," she says, "then you heat the stones." You kneel beside her, dipping your hands into the freezing stream. The shock hits instantly. It's like shaking hands with winter itself. You yelp, and she snorts. "First time, yes," she says. Turns out, Viking washing involves a 3-step ritual: scrub, rinse, survive. They use ash mixed with animal fat as soap, a gray, grainy paste. that smells faintly of smoke and mutton. You rub it into the wool until the fabric squeaks. The water runs cloudy, then clear again, and you realize how much effort goes into what we now take for granted. Clean cloth, your companion says, wringing out a tunic, means clean spirit. You go to Valhalla neat. You can't tell if she's joking. Behind you, a fire crackles in a pit. Someone's heating stones for the next step, pressing. The heat looks deliciously inviting compared to the river. You shuffle closer, hoping to thaw your fingers. The same women from yesterday, the soapstone squad, are already preparing their tools. They've got a rhythm going. One woman lays a damp cloth flat on a plank. Another presses with a glowing stone wrapped in hide. And a third inspects, each finished piece like a Viking version of quality control. You offer to help. Astrid, your unofficial teacher, grins. Good, you have strong arms, she says, handing you a reindeer. Hide pad. Try not to set fire to anything. You carefully place a heated stone on the damp wool. It sizzles softly, releasing steam that smells of smoke and sheep. You press and move it in small circles, just as she taught you. The result: miraculously smooth fabric. The wrinkles melt away, replaced by a faint sheen. The others nod approvingly. As you work, you start to notice something else: the way everyone moves together. It's almost choreographed, lifting, pressing, folding, chatting. A rhythm builds, and before long, someone starts humming. The tune is simple, repetitive, and oddly hypnotic. Even the sound of the river seems to join in. For a moment, you forget the cold. You're part of something ancient, a communal dance of survival disguised as housework. The steam fogs your hair, your hands ache, but you feel alive. Not bad, Astrid says after a while, examining your finished piece. You would make a fine wife. You laugh nervously, not sure if that's a compliment or a threat. She laughs too. Don't worry, she says. The stones choose who they like. You, they like. Somewhere behind you, a kid slips into the river with a splash, followed by shrieks of laughter. Someone yells, he'll come out cleaner. You grin. Life here is hard, but there's warmth hidden in the routine. In the fire, the laughter. The shared chores. You glance at the pile of steaming garments and can't help thinking. This might be the oldest form of self-care. In a world of storms and raids, maybe ironing your clothes was a small act of control, a way to say, I can't calm the sea, but I can flatten my tunic. As the last of the linen is pressed and folded, the women start hanging them on wooden poles to dry. The fabrics ripple in the cold wind, glowing white against the gray landscape. They look almost alive, like sails waiting for adventure. You stand back, hands warm, clothes spotless, spirit strangely peaceful. History often remembers the Vikings for their swords and ships, but right now, standing beside a fire, watching steam rise into the dawn. You know there's another story here, a quieter one, told through the hiss of hot stones and the rhythm of clean hands. By now, your hands smell permanently of smoke and sheep fat, but you've earned a certain reputation in the village. When someone needs a shirt pressed or a cloak smoothed, they call for you. The outsider who somehow tamed the stones. Today, however, Astrid has something else in mind. You've worked with stones, she says over breakfast, tearing a piece of barley bread in half. Now you'll learn how to choose them. You follow her past the fields where frost glitters like spilled sugar and into a rocky hill behind the settlement. The climb is steep, the ground slick with moss. Every village has its quarry, Astrid says, her breath fogging in the air. But only fools grab any rock they find. The stone must speak. Speak, you raise an eyebrow, but she's serious. She kneels and presses her ear to a boulder, as if listening for gossip. Too brittle, she mutters, moving on. You can't help but smile. This feels less like mining and more like matchmaking. Finally, she finds one. Steatite, she says proudly, knocking it with a knife. The sound is low, dull, comforting, like a drum wrapped in wool. Soft enough to carve, strong enough to hold heat. The god's gift to the patient. You help her chip away at the rock, shaping small, palm-sized pieces. It's slow work, but strangely meditative. The sound of metal against stone echoes through the valley. After a while, she holds up one of the pieces to the light. See how smooth, she says. When it's polished, It will glide like a swan. She hands you a rough chunk. Your turn. You try to carve it the way she did, but your hands are clumsy. The first one cracks. The second one flies into the bushes. Astrid sighs, amused. You fight the stone, she says. You must listen instead. You pause, take a breath, and try again. Slower this time. The surface starts to take shape, curved, soft, balanced. When you run your thumb across it, it feels right. Alive, almost. Better, she says. You see, every stone has memory. It remembers heat, hands, patience. Treat it gently, and it will serve you. You glance at her, wondering if she means that literally or poetically. With Vikings, it's always hard to tell. As the day goes on, she tells you how certain villages traded these soapstones across vast distances, some reaching as far as Scotland and Ireland. Historians still argue about whether they were sold as household tools, luxury items, or even status symbols. One theory says the finest stones were given as wedding gifts, symbols of warmth and domestic harmony. You can almost picture it, a proud groom offering a beautifully carved smoother to his bride, saying, "May our linens never wrinkle, and our tempers never scorch." Romantic in a very practical kind of way. By late afternoon, your hands are coated in gray dust, and the fire back at the village is calling. Astrid packs the stones into a leather satchel. Each one, she says, has its purpose. Some will smooth fabric. Some will guard homes. Some, she pauses, tapping the smallest piece, will choose you. That last bit sounds suspiciously like prophecy, but you don't argue. You just smile, because the wind has picked up, carrying the scent of salt and pine, and you can hear the distant crash of waves below. On your way back, she tells you that in the old days, they believed soapstone came from the bones of the earth itself. Soft where the world is kind, hard where it remembers sorrow. You can't tell if it's folklore or geology, but it sticks in your mind. When you reach the village, the sun is low, the fjord glowing gold. You glance at the stone in your hand, gray, unremarkable, but somehow warm. Maybe it's true what she said. Stones remember. And tonight, when the fire burns low and someone asks who you are, maybe you'll answer differently. You're not just a traveler anymore. You're a keeper of stones. The morning fog clings to your hair like a damp blanket, and you're back at the village, following Astrid toward a long, low building that smells of smoke, wet wool, and something sweet, like burnt honey today, she says. You'll learn the science behind the stones, or at least Viking science, which is a delicate mix of observation, superstition, and stubborn practicality. Inside, the women have set up a small workshop. A wooden plank stretches across the room, lined with damp cloths. In the hearth, stones glow like little suns, and the smell of heated animal fat fills the air. You're handed a stone that seems almost alive in your hand. Astrid smiles. Feel it, the heat, the weight. Let it guide you. You press the stone onto a linen sheet. Steam hisses as the damp fibers meet the hot surface. The fabric flattens, smooths, almost as if it's being persuaded rather than pressed. Someone mentions casually that, in old times, they believed the steam itself carried away misfortune. Wrinkles weren't just unsightly, they were unlucky. The smooth linen, they said, protected the household from chaos. You try not to laugh. A stone preventing bad luck. Only in Viking villages, you think. But as you slide it across the cloth again and again, a strange rhythm emerges. Hot stone meets wet linen, hiss, slide, repeat. It's hypnotic. You realize there's a sort of meditation in ironing, a flow state far older than modern mindfulness apps. Astrid gestures at a cluster of stones. Notice, she says. Some stones hold heat longer. Some release it fast. Some are stubborn, like men after a long voyage. Choose carefully. You can't help but grin. In every household chore, there's metaphor. Even your ironing lesson is a subtle life lesson. One of the younger women, giggling, mentions that a misused stone could scorch the cloth, and by extension, invite bad luck. You wonder if they're joking, but no one's laughing seriously. So you treat it with care. Every pass of the stone over the wet cloth feels ceremonial. You're aware of the steam curling into the rafters, of your heartbeat matching the gentle sizzle, of the tiny universe of warmth you've created in the cold hall. Here's a fun nugget. Historians still debate whether Vikings truly believed in steam-driven luck, or if this was just poetic storytelling by later chroniclers. Some say the magic was more psychological. Smooth linen gave confidence, which translated into better social standing. Others argue it was literal. Maybe they really thought a wrinkle could invite misfortune. Meanwhile, you notice how efficiently the women work together. One lays the linen, another presses with the heated stone, a third folds finished pieces. There's laughter, chatter, teasing remarks. It's functional choreography, domestic teamwork elevated to an art form. You slide the stone over a particularly stubborn crease, and the cloth sighs under the pressure. Finally lying flat, there's a small, victorious cheer from Astrid. You pause, letting the steam rise around you. There's warmth, order, rhythm, and a hint of the absurd all at once. Who knew that ironing could be this enchanting, or that it could feel so connected to centuries of Viking life? By the time you leave the hall, the fog has lifted slightly. The village seems alive with possibility, even under the gray northern sky. You glance at the stones you carried back to your hands, glimmering faintly, as if they remember the heat, the hands the careful pressure. Maybe they do. It's a strange, beautiful thought. A hot stone, a damp cloth, and the belief that small acts can hold chaos at bay. By midday, the village has warmed under a weak sun that glints off the fjord like spilled silver. You follow Astrid to the drying fields, where lines of linen ripple in the wind like tiny white sails. But today's lesson isn't about ironing. It's about fabric choice and pride. You pick up a rough, gray tunic and notice the differences immediately. Some fabrics are soft, almost like velvet. Others scratch your skin like sandpaper. Astrid explains that Vikings had clear preferences: wool for warmth, linen for comfort, and hemp for sturdiness. Each type required a different technique for smoothing with stones. A wool tunic might need a firmer press, a damp cloth to avoid scorching, linen, a lighter touch, just enough heat to release stubborn wrinkles. You try pressing a flaxen linen shirt. The hot stone glides easily, leaving the fibers shiny and crisp. Astrid nods. See, pride comes from attention to detail. A wrinkled tunic, lazy. A smooth tunic, respect. A young woman nearby whispers a little-known fact. In some villages, only married women were trusted to use the finest smoothing stones, because the community believed that well-pressed clothing reflected domestic skill, and, by extension, marital suitability. You raise an eyebrow. Who knew ironing could double as matchmaking? As you continue, Astrid adds a twist. The smoothest clothes often signal wealth, she says. Even warriors notice. If your tunic glides over their eyes without wrinkles, they think disciplined, capable. Good household management, wrinkles. You laugh, imagining Viking chieftains, judging fabric folds like modern judges scoring gymnastics. At one point, you misjudge the heat of your stone. The linen smokes faintly. Astrid claps a hand to her mouth, suppressing laughter. Ah, nearly burned the village pride, she teases. You grimace, but she pats your back. Mistakes teach patience, and patience teaches perfection. The more you work, the more you notice. The rhythm of the day, river washing, hearth heating, stone pressing, and then hanging the fabrics in the wind. Each action has purpose, each stone a personality. Some are heavy and reliable, others light and capricious. Historians still argue whether these preferences were learned through observation or through ritualized superstition. Either way, you can feel the logic. A skilled hand with the right stone produces perfection. You pause to admire the drying linens, swaying gently like the fjord below. The edges are sharp, the surface is smooth, the folds so precise it almost seems unnatural. A sense of accomplishment settles over you, paired with something you hadn't expected: quiet joy. In this world of raids and rough seas, smooth fabric was a small, tangible victory. Astrid leans over, pointing to a particularly stubborn crease in a heavy wool cloak. Try again, she says. See, even the finest warriors must learn humility. You roll your eyes and grin, pressing carefully, mindful of the lessons of heat, weight, and patience. By the time the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the fjord, you realize something. Vikings weren't just warriors or sailors. They were masters of order in small things. And maybe that's why their laundry rituals mattered. They were fighting chaos in the world. And, in some small way, conquering it stitch by stitch, stone by stone. The evening settles over the village like a soft wool blanket, and you find yourself wandering toward the longhouse again, drawn by the smell of roasted fish and hot stones. Today's lesson: steam and superstition. A combination that sounds both practical and slightly magical. Inside, the women have prepared several shallow basins of water. Steam, Astrid explains, helps the stones smooth fabric more evenly. But it also keeps bad spirits away. You blink. Bad spirits. You've heard Viking superstition before, but now it's combined with ironing. Somehow it feels oddly appropriate. One of the women dips a linen shirt into the warm water, wrings it out, then sets it carefully on a wooden plank. She lifts a heated stone and presses it gently, steam rising in lazy curls. "The spirits dislike wrinkles," she murmurs. You can't tell if she's serious, but the linen glistens under the stone, flawless and almost alive. You pick up a stone yourself. The moment it touches the damp fabric, a soft hiss fills the room. Steam swirls around your hands, curling into the rafters like smoke signals. You feel hypnotized. Somehow, the process feels like a ritual: heat, water, pressure, rhythm. Each pass of the stone is deliberate, precise, and somewhere in your mind, you imagine that maybe, just maybe, the wrinkles really are leaving with the steam. Astrid leans over and whispers another curious fact. Some historians debate whether Vikings actually believed steam could ward off evil, or if it was just a clever way to explain why damp cloths worked better with heated stones. Either way, the result is undeniable: smoother fabric, calmer hands, and a quiet, almost meditative atmosphere. As you work, the village seems to fade away. Outside, the fjord reflects the deep orange of the setting sun. Inside, the warm air rises in gentle clouds, and the rhythmic hiss of stones pressing on damp linen becomes a sort of Viking lullaby. A child tiptoes past, watching you with wide eyes, and you realize the domestic magic here is as enchanting as any saga of conquest or adventure. You press a stubborn crease for the final time. The linen surrenders gracefully, as if acknowledging your patience. Astrid claps softly. Good, you understand. Steam is not just heat, it is patience, ritual, and care. And there's a funny little twist. In some villages, it was considered unlucky to iron clothing on certain days, like market days or festival days. The belief was that spirits were busy elsewhere and might retaliate against misbehaving fabrics. Today, of course, you're ignoring those rules, pressing carefully, savoring the hiss of steam. The risk seems worth it. By the end of the session, the longhouse smells like warm wool, animal fat, and faintly of magic. You can feel the connection to generations of women who have done this before, and perhaps to men too. The rhythm, the steam, the superstition, it's all woven together, just like the fibers of the linen in your hands. You set your stone down, watching the final sheet hang to dry. For a brief fleeting moment, you understand something profound. Vikings, with all their raids and adventures, also found small ways to control their world. A hot stone, some water, a careful hand, and chaos, at least in the form of wrinkles, is tamed. Dawn breaks slowly over the fjord, and you wake to the faint scent of smoked fish, mingling with the crisp morning air. Today's lesson is subtler. Tools of tradition, the little details that make Viking ironing a surprisingly refined craft. Astrid greets you with a grin. Not all stones are equal, she says, leading you toward a wooden shelf filled with smooth oval shapes. Some are gray, some greenish, and one even has flecks that sparkle like tiny stars. Each stone has a story. Some come from riverbeds, others from volcanic rock, and the rarest, well, historians still debate exactly how they sourced those, are said to have been gifts from traveling traders or scavenged from faraway shores. You pick up a mid-sized gray stone. It feels warm from the morning sun and balanced in your hand. Astrid nods approvingly. This one is honest. It does what you ask. You press it against a damp tunic, and steam hisses like an obedient dragon. Nearby, a young girl giggles as she holds a greenish stone with curious carvings. That one's stubborn, Astrid warns. It likes to fight, But if you treat it well, it will reward you with perfect creases. You can't help but think of it as Viking karma for linen. As you glide the stone over the damp fabric, Astrid shares a quirky fact. In some communities, soapstones were personalized. People would carve runes, patterns, or even small images into the surface. These carvings weren't just decorative. They supposedly enhanced the stone's ability to hold heat or channel good energy. Modern archaeologists still debate whether this was superstition, aesthetic preference. You run your thumb over a carved swirl. It feels smooth, almost like the stone is encouraging you. Steam curls upward, fogging your vision slightly, and the room is filled with the rhythmic hiss of stones meeting cloth. You begin to notice a subtle choreography. Women moving together, stones gliding in sync, cloths folding in perfect order. It's domestic ballet with a hint of magic. Astrid observes your work quietly. Notice how the stone remembers, she says. The more you use it, the smoother it glides. Like life, really. Patience and repetition reward you. You nod, even though you're not entirely sure if she's being metaphorical or literal. Probably both. As you press the final tunic, a small thought strikes you. Vikings, famous for raiding and pillaging, also innovated in ways almost invisible to history. They weren't just concerned with survival. They cared about domestic order, rhythm, and the little victories of a smooth seam. That, in itself, feels revolutionary. Outside, the fjord gleams in the morning sun. You hold your stone, now warm and familiar in your hand. It's a tool, a companion, maybe even a tiny teacher. And you realize something strange but comforting. The Vikings' legacy isn't only in swords and ships. It's in the quiet, meticulous art of pressing a tunic just right. And the centuries of stories that rise in the steam. Mid-morning sun filters through the longhouse windows, and you're back at your favorite station, the ironing plank by the hearth. Today, Astrid wants to show you the advanced techniques, the subtle movements that make a stone glide like butter, instead of dragging like a stubborn moose. She hands you a smooth, oval soapstone, warm from the fire. Feel it, she says. The weight, the balance. Let your hand become part of it. You follow her instructions, sliding it slowly across a damp wool tunic. Steam curls lazily, filling the room with that comforting hiss you've come to love. Then she drops a little nugget. Vikings didn't just press clothing for practicality. Some households engraved messages or symbols into the fabric using hot stones. Names, runes for protection, even little doodles of animals. Modern historians still debate how widespread this practice was. But evidence from certain Norse settlements suggests it wasn't purely decorative. It was both art and ritual, kind of like Viking calligraphy, with a hint of domestic superstition. As you press, you notice the subtle rhythm of the motion forward. Back, small circular strokes. Too fast, and the fabric wrinkles again. Too slow, and you lose the warmth. Astrid watches, nodding. See, it's patience. The stone will guide you, but you must listen. You laugh softly, listen to a rock. Only here. A young apprentice nearby whispers a quirky fact. Some stones, when heated too quickly, would crack or make a loud pop, startling the unwary. It's a Viking version of a fire alarm, she jokes. You can't help but chuckle, imagining armored raiders jumping back in fright at a popping stone. Not exactly the terror you'd expect in sagas. By afternoon, the plank is covered with rows of folded, steaming linen. Each piece is pristine, soft, and slightly warm to the touch. Astrid gestures at them like a proud artist. These fabrics tell stories, she says. Not just of skill, but of care, of patience, and sometimes of love. You pause, looking around. Steam rises in lazy spirals. Women move with practiced precision. The hissing of stones fills the quiet gaps between conversation. Even the air smells comforting, a mix of wool, smoke, and faint animal fat. It's domestic chaos tamed into gentle harmony, a small human victory in a rough northern world. Before leaving, Astrid hands you a carved soapstone with intricate swirls. Take it, she says. Your hands will learn from it. Every stone teaches differently. Some are stubborn, some gentle, some wise. You hold it close, feeling the warmth seep into your palms, and for a moment, the loud raiding Viking world fades. You realize then that history isn't only in battles or ships. Sometimes it's in the steam rising from a pressed tunic, in the warmth of a stone in your hand, and in the soft rhythm of patience, learned one crease at a time. The sky is a pale gray, and a gentle breeze drifts across the village as you follow Astrid toward a cluster of stones near the riverbank. Today's focus is storing and maintaining these magical little tools, a surprisingly meticulous task that Vikings took seriously. Astrid picks up a flat, greenish stone and runs her fingers over its smooth surface. After use, it must cool slowly, she says. Too quick, it cracks. Too slow, it loses its memory. You blink. Memory. Apparently, stones hold impressions of heat, pressure, and handling. A well-loved stone remembers the motions of its user. Historians still debate whether this is literal or poetic exaggeration. But in your hands, the theory feels real. Nearby, a teenage apprentice balances a row of stones along a plank, whispering protective charms over them. You ask Astrid if that's necessary. She shrugs, smiling. Some swear by it, others just like the ritual. Either way, it keeps the tools safe. You nod, amused. Even Vikings had superstitions for their ironing gear. Then comes the practical part. You dip each stone into the river briefly to remove residue. Wipe it carefully with a soft cloth and set it to dry in the sun. The stones glimmer faintly, each one unique, gray, green, speckled, and polished from generations of use. Some have small chips, but you learn quickly, imperfections don't ruin a stone. They give it character. Astrid shares a quirky fact. Certain stones were considered heirlooms, passed down through generations. A grandmother might hand her granddaughter a favorite smoother, saying, "May it bring you calm hands and a sharp eye for wrinkles." You can almost picture the scene, a little domestic inheritance, Viking style. The rhythmic clinking of stones and the hiss of river water becomes almost hypnotic. You notice how the villagers handle the tools with care and respect. There's pride here, in what seems like a mundane task. Smooth linen is more than comfort. It's status, artistry, and perhaps even a symbol of control in a chaotic world. As you place the last stone on its wooden shelf, Astrid nods approvingly. A well-kept stone lasts a lifetime. Treat it poorly, and it rebels. You chuckle, imagining a soapstone staging a tiny domestic mutiny. Outside, the wind picks up, rustling the drying linens. You glance at the river reflecting the gray sky and think about all the tiny deliberate actions that make up a Viking household. Pressing linen, heating stones, preserving tools. It's a quiet, persistent mastery of the ordinary. And somewhere in that mundane perfection, you feel a strange kinship with people who lived 1,000 years ago. Maybe the Vikings' legacy isn't only in conquest, but in the careful, loving attention to the small, heated rituals that smooth both fabric and life. The afternoon sun softens into a gentle glow as you return to the longhouse. Your hands still faintly warm from the river-rinsed stones. Today, Astrid introduces you to portable ironing, which might sound odd, but Vikings were surprisingly mobile. Cloth had to stay neat, even on the move. She hands you a small, oval stone, lighter than the others. This is for travel, she explains. Compact, efficient, and loyal. You tuck it into your satchel, imagining yourself crossing fjords and forests, stopping by a campfire to smooth your tunic while birds chirp nearby. It seems absurdly civilized for a people famed for pillaging. Nearby, a group of apprentices practices folding and pressing in miniature, like tiny domestic soldiers. One of them whispers a fun tidbit. Some Vikings reportedly carried small smoothing stones, even on long sea voyages, believing that neat clothing brought favorable winds. Scholars debate whether this was superstition or practical pride, but the idea paints an amusing mental picture, raiders pausing mid-raid to press their tunics. You test the travel stone on a damp linen shirt. The result is surprisingly effective, smooth, crisp, and easy to manage. Astrid smiles. Even when far from home, control what you can, a wrinkle-free tunic, a clear mind. You wonder if she's serious or just being poetic, but the rhythm of pressing does calm your thoughts. A quirky historical aside surfaces in conversation. Some stones were marked with tiny runes for identification. If a traveler's smoother went missing, it was easy to reclaim. It's domestic innovation, meets semi-superstitious practicality. Vikings were nothing if not inventive. As the day fades, the longhouse grows quiet. You look around at the neatly stacked linens, polished stones, and diligent apprentices. Even the fire's crackle seems to participate in the rhythm. Smooth fabrics, heated stones, portable tools, they represent a subtle mastery of life, a quiet defiance of chaos, even in a world of unpredictable seas and raiding neighbors. You hold the small travel stone in your hand, feeling its smooth weight and warmth. It's a reminder that mastery comes in many forms, not just through strength or swordplay, but through attention, patience, and respect for the little things. Maybe that's what the Vikings understood all along. Sometimes the smallest tools teach the biggest lessons. Twilight spills over the fjord, painting everything in soft purples and golds. And you're back by the hearth for the creative uses of stone's lesson. Vikings didn't just smooth tunics. They experimented, adapted, and sometimes got downright inventive with their tools. Astrid places a damp wool cloak on the plank and hands you a large, oddly shaped stone. "This one's for curves and collars," she says. You frown. Curves. Collars. You've only mastered flat stretches. She smiles knowingly. Every shape has a stone that fits it, like puzzle pieces. You press along the collar, steam rises, and the wool bends perfectly. The effect is subtle but remarkable. You can imagine a chieftain inspecting his reflection, proud of the smooth line, unaware of the quiet artistry behind it. Nearby, a young apprentice demonstrates a quirky trick, rolling a smaller stone over a damp shirt to create gentle patterns. "It's decorative," she says, giggling. Some say it keeps spirits happy. Others think it's just fun. Historians still debate whether patterned ironing was symbolic, magical, or purely aesthetic. But the results are undeniably charming. As you experiment, Astrid shares a practical tip. Thicker fabrics often need 2 stones. One hot for pressing, one cooler to control steam. "Think of it as a tag team," she says. You can't help but laugh at the image of 2 stones duking it out on a tunic, yet it works. The fabric smooths beautifully, folds settle naturally, and your hands start moving with growing confidence. A particularly interesting aside emerges. Some Viking explorers carried miniature smoothing stones to foreign lands, hoping their domestic precision would impress locals or maintain morale. Imagine a raiding party disembarking in England, with one warrior secretly polishing his tunic before dinner. Historians debate whether this happened often, but it adds a whimsical layer to the image of the fierce, bearded Viking. As night falls, the hearth glows warmly. Steam curls around your hands, linen lies pristine, and the quiet rhythm of pressing feels almost hypnotic. You glance at the stones in your hands, oddly shaped, patterned, and imperfect, and realize each one has a personality, a lesson, and perhaps a tiny measure of magic. By the time you lay your tools down, the longhouse is peaceful. The creative experiments remind you that Vikings weren't just practical. They were playful, inventive, and surprisingly gentle in their domestic arts. Steam, stones, and imagination combine in a quiet ballet of warmth, rhythm, and skill. The northern night has settled in, and you find yourself sitting cross-legged on the longhouse floor. Stones lined up like tiny sentinels before you. Today's lesson is about ritual and rhythm, the almost meditative practice that turns ironing into art. Astrid speaks softly. Notice the sound, the heat, the resistance of the fabric. Each pass of the stone is deliberate. It's not just smoothing. It's tuning yourself to the day, to the world. You press a damp tunic, steam rising, and the hiss fills the quiet room. It's rhythmic, almost musical, like the heartbeat of the household itself. A young apprentice hums a tune as she works. You ask her why, and she shrugs. "It helps the stones remember," she says, smiling. Historians still debate if this was literal or metaphorical, but it adds a charming layer to the idea of Viking domestic life. Music, rhythm, and ironing somehow coexist. You notice small gestures that make the process almost ceremonial. Stones are warmed carefully, fabrics laid flat with reverence, hands moving in gentle arcs. It reminds you of a slow, quiet dance, ancient, domestic, and strangely hypnotic. Even the children peek in, fascinated, but learn to watch in silence, absorbing the rhythm. Astrid points out that this rhythm also served a practical purpose. A steady pace prevented scorching, conserved heat, and allowed multiple fabrics to be pressed efficiently. But there's also a subtle lesson in patience. Rush, and the cloth resists. Move gently, and it flows. You smile at the duality, practicality, and philosophy, all woven together with steam and stones. Then comes a quirky aside. Some stones had faint carvings to indicate the optimal hand positions, or pressing angles. Think of it as a Viking user manual, etched in rock. Archaeologists have found a few examples, and they're still puzzling over whether these were standardized instructions or personal hacks. Either way, it adds personality to the mundane. By the end of the session, the stones rest beside you, warm and familiar, and the fabrics lie perfectly flat. The quiet, meditative practice leaves a calmness in your mind. You realize that Vikings, despite their fearsome reputation, found moments of domestic peace, creativity, and gentle control over their immediate world. Steam curls around the rafters as you rise to leave, carrying the subtle understanding that rhythm, ritual, and careful hands can make even the simplest acts feel profound. The night outside is dark but welcoming, and the soft glow of the hearth lingers in your memory. A testament to the quiet artistry of daily life long ago. The sky is a deep indigo now, sprinkled with stars, and you're back at the longhouse. Stones lined like tiny sentinels on the wooden plank. Tonight's lesson is about community and shared knowledge. How ironing with stones was more than a solitary task. Astrid gestures toward a group of women who move in sync, each pressing, each folding, each sharing tips in quiet murmurs. You notice how techniques are passed down. A small adjustment here, a clever twist there. It's a living tradition, evolving with each generation. Historians still debate whether these techniques spread widely or were unique to each household. But the result is mesmerizing. You join in, passing the stone along, pressing your tunic with care. One of the younger apprentices whispers a fun fact. Some villages had ironing days where everyone worked together, exchanged stones, and shared secrets. It was as much social as practical, a subtle way to bond, teach, and preserve knowledge. You start to feel the rhythm of the group, stones hissing, steam curling, hands moving in harmony. It's almost musical, a domestic symphony of warmth and patience. Each stone seems to resonate with the others, and the fabrics respond, lying smooth under the combined effort. Astrid points to a carved stone passed down from her grandmother. Some stones carry wisdom, she says. They remember the hands that used them, the fabrics they touched, the stories whispered over them. You press gently, imagining centuries of hands leaving their invisible marks. Then comes a quirky detail. Some villages kept a stone ledger, a simple record of which stones belonged to whom, sometimes noting their quirks. Some heeded quickly, some stubbornly resisted. Scholars debate whether these ledgers were practical or ritualistic, but it's a charming image. Viking domestic bureaucracy at its finest. As the night deepens, you notice the calm that has settled over the longhouse. Steam rises in lazy spirals, women chat softly, and fabrics shine with quiet perfection. You realize that this shared domestic art, subtle and patient, fostered not only neat clothing, but also trust, community, and continuity. When you finally set your stone down, you feel a gentle connection to all those who came before. The practice of ironing with stones, playful, practical, and ritualistic, wasn't just about smooth linen. It was about weaving the fabric of life itself, stitch by stitch, stone by stone. Night has fully fallen, and the longhouse is bathed in the soft glow of embers. Tonight's lesson is the culmination of everything you've learned, legacy and reflection. You trace the smooth stones with your fingers, feeling their warmth and the faint traces of countless past hands. Each one is a small story, a tiny vessel of memory. Astrid speaks softly. These stones carry more than heat. They carry knowledge, care, and a sense of order. You can hold a Viking's routine in your hands, even 1,000 years later. You press a tunic one last time, noticing how the fabric responds smoothly, obediently, like it's been waiting for you to master it. Nearby, a child giggles as she mimics your movements with a tiny flat rock. It's both adorable and revealing. These domestic arts were taught early, shared freely, and lived in daily rhythm. Historians still debate the extent of such practices, but seeing it in action now, it feels undeniably real. You pause to reflect on the quirks you've learned. Carved stones, engraved runes, steam rituals, portable smoothing tools, communal ironing days, and even superstition about spirits. It's a mosaic of practicality, artistry, and culture. Vikings, known for raids and ships, were also careful, inventive, and surprisingly gentle with the ordinary. A funny thought crosses your mind. Armies of raiders, each polishing tunics, carrying stones on longships, probably looked utterly ridiculous to anyone from the outside. And yet, in that ridiculousness lies wisdom, a lesson that life is as much about small victories as grand adventures. As you lay down your final stone, you realize the quiet power of these rituals. Steam rising, fabric smooth, stones warm. It's all a meditation in motion, a bridge between past and present. You understand that history isn't just in battles or sagas. It's in the steady rhythm of hands, the soft hiss of stones, and the patient pursuit of perfection in daily life. The longhouse is quiet now. Outside, the fjord mirrors the starlit sky, calm and endless, and you feel the warmth of the stones lingering in your hands. The steam has faded, but the rhythm, the patience, the care, it remains with you. You breathe slowly, letting the soft glow of the embers fill your vision, and your mind drifts with the gentle motion of pressing, folding, and smoothing. Imagine yourself lying down on a soft mat, a warmth of a woolen cloak around your shoulders, a faint scent of smoke and linen in the air. Your hands remember the motion even as you rest, and you feel a quiet sense of mastery over small, deliberate acts. The world outside might be unpredictable, but here, in this memory of Vikings, there is calm, rhythm, and gentle order. Let your thoughts float, light as the steam that once curled above hot stones. Each crease smoothed, each tunic pressed, each stone held with care. It's a meditation that transcends time. You can feel yourself slipping into the soft edge of sleep, drifting over fjords, into longhouses, past generations who lived, loved, and cared for the ordinary in extraordinary ways. Now, your breathing slows further. Your muscles relax. You are safe, warm, and guided by the gentle echo of hissing steam and smooth fabric. Let the quiet persist. Let the stones rest. Let the story linger in the gentle corners of your mind. Good night. And may your dreams carry the calm rhythm of Vikings, pressing their tunics with care.